For some people, they know what they want to do when they're 16. They go to school for it, line up their internships, and boom, 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 boom. It's all planned out. That wasn't my path.
You are now holding the title of Microsoft Enablement Manager.
Our entire business is implementing Microsoft solutions. My job is to manage all the different pieces of that relationship, knowing how to bring people from different parts of the organization together to solve a complex problem. That is the number one skill that I've picked up in my career.
You said being in a room full of women in tech opened my eyes to where I could take my career. I started thinking, why couldn't I be COO?
The best decisions are made by a diverse group of perspectives. To have that example in front of me, all of these women did it, you can too.
Hey, welcome to this week's episode of Power Talks. My name is Griffin, the host of the Citizen Developer channel, and today I am joined by special guest Meg Johnson. And Meg is a Microsoft Enablement Manager at Hitachi Solutions, which is a Microsoft partner and IT consulting firm that specializes largely in Microsoft Dynamics and Power Platform solutions. And from sitting in on executive meetings to preparing monthly operational reports and even working closely with the executive level leadership, she knows what it means to define the priorities of the business and then execute on them. Now, Meg was recently promoted to take on her most challenging position yet, managing Hitachi's relationship with Microsoft. Meg, welcome to the show.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to have you on. We were talking a little bit before, just, most of the people on this show tend to be in the weeds, in the nitty-gritty.
Yeah.
They're technical people, they're meeting with clients. I'm really excited to have your perspective on the show from more of, the business side of it, from the perspective of, managing these resources that are delivering this client value. And we will certainly get into that. But something that I did not mention in your intro, but I think is fundamental to your story, is the pride you take in being a woman in tech. And I think that I would fall so short in giving it justice. And so I kind of wanted to give you the floor on why is it important for women to believe that there is a space, and not only that a space exists, but that there is a need for them in this space.
Yeah, absolutely. I can talk about that all day long. So thanks for giving me the opportunity. So as you mentioned, I'm on the business and operational side of what we do. I actually came into this company as I started as an executive assistant to our COO and eventually our CEO. And so I started in an administrative role, and I didn't know anything about what we did as a company. I couldn't spell Azure. I didn't know what Dynamics was. I knew a little bit about CRM, but I didn't really know anything technical. And so I was really fortunate to work for a super strong, badass woman. Her name is Jessica Hawk. She's now corporate vice president at Microsoft, but she was the person that I reported to. And so I had a great example there of someone who was just super strong in what they did and sort of like didn't take no for an answer and set a great example. And so pretty quickly, I think it was after my first week, she sat me down and was like, okay, you have a future here. Like this, we got to start thinking about beyond what you do and beyond the administrative stuff. Yes, you can do that. And if that's really what you want to do, I'll support you. But this can look so much bigger for you. Which was the first time that I really had thought about that. And so fast forward about 6 months later into that role, I had the opportunity to attend a conference called Women in Cloud, and it was hosted in Redmond on the Microsoft's campus. And I got to go with, I think there were maybe 8 or 10 of us women throughout different parts of the organization, and we got together in person for a 2 or 3 day conference. And the first time I got to meet other women at Hitachi Solutions. So they were in sales and marketing, in our technical delivery, on our managed services team. They were sort of in all parts of our organization. And then we got to attend this conference, which was a room full of hundreds of women talking about what it means to be a woman in cloud and particularly work with Microsoft. And I just, for the first time, was like, wow, this is really cool to have that example in front of me of this is what you could do. Like all of these women did it, you can too. And I just felt so fortunate to be able to be in that space. And I left and said, we kind of all said, like, how do we bottle up this feeling and bring it back to the other people at Hitachi Solutions? Like, not everyone could be in this room, but how can we bring the same experience there? And so we decided to sort of revive one of our employee resource groups. We call it Kanzai. We're a Japanese company. And so Kanzai means mixed voice or mixed community. So that's sort of our employee resource group um, group of communities. So we revamped our women's employee resource group and decided to sort of reestablish it, set up a couple different goals, and create more of a structure and organization around what that group can offer to our employees. And since then, that was back in 2020, we now have a total of 5 employee resource groups. We have them for all sorts of different underserved communities, and it really is just a way to create community, especially in a virtual world. You know, our company was virtual before COVID. Consultants lived all over the place, right? You're in North Dakota, I'm in Chicago. Some people are even like digital nomads in our organization, which is just so cool. But sometimes it's hard to then feel that sense of community, and it can be really isolating too. It can feel like, especially if you're stuck on a project for 18 months and it's the same couple people, and it's just to have another place in the company where you can connect to like-minded people or folks who might be going through the same experiencing some of the same things as you. That's sort of what our goal was in bringing this employee resource group to Hitachi Solutions. And we've started a mentorship program. We've focused on speaking opportunities for women. We've done some leadership development. We've put a couple different people through executive level programming or at Cornell University, taken advantage of a couple other women's groups that we formed partnership. And so it's just been really, really special to see the impact that that's had for women at Hitachi Solutions.
Yeah. Okay. I love absolutely everything you just shared, but it was so much. I need to take a step back. You're getting ahead of me. So I wanna take us back to the Women in Cloud conference.
Yeah.
And so you had said something that I guess I wanted to read here. You said being in a room full of women in tech opened my eyes to where I could take my career. I
Yeah.
started thinking, why couldn't I be COO?
Yeah.
I love this. I think, and you were touching on this. I kind of, I guess, just wanted to ask you if you could elaborate, like, like when you were in that moment having this revelation, like what was that like, and kind of if you could, bottle it up and share it to someone listening now, like, and this is a full question here, like, I mean, what was that like, like, if you wouldn't mind sharing that experience, I guess that'd be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I think that being in that room was sort of the first time that it hit me that I had some like examples surrounding me. So, um, I grew up in a community where a lot of my friends' moms didn't necessarily work. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, and so I just didn't see a lot of those examples around me. And my career up until joining Hitachi Solutions, I happened to have worked for some really strong women. I was always in the administrative position. And so I was starting to see some examples of that, but I still didn't necessarily see myself in that role. I saw them as like, oh, they have different backgrounds than me. They studied this in school. I have a biology degree. I was planning to go to med school and then life took different turns. So I ended up in administrative work, which I take a lot of pride in that work. I think it definitely got me to where I am today, but I didn't see myself outside of that space. until it sort of was like continually encouraged for me. So supporting, like working with a female COO was sort of another piece in the puzzle. And then when I got into that room at that conference and was surrounded by so many other people, that was sort of the first time that I was like, oh, I could be COO. And hearing people's stories, so many different women's stories about their journey, it's not linear. It doesn't have to be linear. For some people, they know what they want to do when they're 16 and they go to school for it and they line up their internships and boom, 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 boom. It's all planned out. That wasn't my path. And that was the first time I was starting to come around to that idea that it doesn't have to be everyone's path.
I think that's great. I Two things. One, I know my mom is proud of me, but I also know she's not listening. So my mom was a stay-at-home mom as well. So I totally get that.
Yeah,
And I think, she's amazing at being a mom and being the administrator of our family, right?
heck
But
yeah.
nonetheless,
That is a full-time job
this
for sure.
absolutely, absolutely. And she must have done something right for me and my brother. But nonetheless, so the second thing I guess was I kind of wanted to ask you as well, and I understand you don't necessarily have, you don't, you're not, your day to day looks very different from my day to day, but I kind of wanted to ask you why, why is it not only possible for women to hold a role like yours, or to maybe on the more technical side hold a role in kind of my world, but why is it not only possible but important for there to be that sort of representation? And so you before you answer, I guess you can think on it for a second. I think my perspective is a lot of times we tend to be working in an environment where there needs to be a lot of creative problem solving. Like the customer has this problem, and most of the time there's 10 different ways that you could potentially meet that business need.
Mm-hmm.
And I think just in all things, like diversity and just how we think and how we approach things is important, right? If you had all three people were just thinking the same thing, then likely you're not going to come up with the best solution. So I think that in a world like mine, that having women in the space, I think are, that maybe different way of thinking, or just different approaches to things, or like different ways to navigate client
Yeah,
conversations. I think sometimes dudes can be particularly less patient maybe, or whatever when it comes to talking to the client. But
yeah,
um,
yeah,
I don't know. That's kind of my perspective, but I wonder what that would be like in kind of the managerial side, or even
yeah,
as you approach the like
yeah.
executive level side of business.
Absolutely. And to your, like, I'll echo your point. Like, the best decisions are made by a diverse group of perspectives, right? And it's beyond just having women enroll, it's all sorts of people from all sorts of backgrounds and all sorts of different perspectives. Everyone brings their past experience to a situation or to the role that they're in. And so the more perspectives you can have, the better your ultimate solution is going to be, in our case, to serve a customer. Absolutely. I think that creates the best project teams. And women bring a different perspective, right? And also, we were talking about this a bit, but seeing women in those roles then encourage other women or other people of color to say, hey, somebody who looks like me or has my background or came up similar to how I came up, they're in this role, and then why can't I do that too? It's sort of like the experience that I had is seeing people in that role helps encourage others that they can do that as well.
Absolutely, that's awesome. One last thing on this, I wanted to. So I know you would never say that you did it on your own, but you were involved in just the creation of these Kanzai groups, right? These, they're focused around, less represented people in the space,
Yeah.
and are open groups, right? For just, yeah, I'll let you explain more
Yeah.
in different things, but I guess I wanted to, because I'm sure you have a much more prepared definition than I'm
It's
giving right
okay.
now, but nonetheless, I guess I kind of wanted to ask you, say I'm listening, and I, at my company, there isn't something like that.
Hmm.
What kind of advice would you have for that person to be like, no, go crush it,
Yeah.
and be a difference maker and support,
Yeah.
these less represented groups?
Absolutely. So Kanzai Women is an employee resource group, and that's kind of what we were talking about. So it's groups that are employee led, but it's a sort of a community group where people from different diverse backgrounds can have a space that's focused around people who face the same challenges that they do. So Kanzai Women is just one of our employee resource groups, and they are all employee led, employee managed, so they're not formalized programs that come down from HR. Sort of the definition of an ERG, employee resource group, is that they're organic and sort of grassroots. So if you want to start one at your organization, there's tons of resources out there for it. That's sort of where I was a while ago. We had a bit of a structure that existed that we built on top of, but we put we just researched to see what these look like at other companies. I did a ton of learning about employee resource groups, and I went to our head of HR and said, "Hey, I'm interested in starting this group. What does that look like here? What do I need to do?" And for us, it was about creating a Teams channel that everyone in our organization has access to, so we could post learnings, we could host meetings, we can sort of have an ongoing conversation that everyone feels that they're able to access. Um, we thought about the different ways that we want to serve our company. And so for us, it was about mentorship, it was about leadership opportunities and leadership development. It's about recruiting more women into the organization and then also supporting the women who are here. What programmatic changes and improvements can we make to make lives better for the women who are here? And then about connecting us to the outside community. So we now have 4 others. We have Kansai Pride, which focuses on LGBTQ groups. We have a BIPOC group. We have a Panda, which focuses on physical and neurological differences. And then we have a veterans group, which is our newest group that focus on veterans, which is also the neat thing about our organization is that we're not just in the US. Our company is in Canada, the US, we have Costa Rican employees, and then we have a large team in India as well. And the coolest thing about these groups is that seeing folks from all of these different locations come together and have similar experiences. That's one of, I think, my favorite parts about these groups is just the way that it's brought together employees all over the world who share common experiences.
Awesome,
Did
awesome.
I answer your question?
Yeah, you did. I think that's great. If you're listening out there, feel empowered. Go
Yeah,
create an ERG.
it's up to you to create what it looks like. And these this is something that you do kind of in addition to your day job a lot of times. So sometimes there's funding available from your companies to pursue these opportunities, sometimes there's not. And recognize that everyone's kind of doing this off the side of their desk. So it's okay if you start small and start slow. That's great. Like it doesn't have to be a full-blown program to have value. This is our 4th year in the program, and every year we get a little bit better. We have more volunteers that help organize the group, and so we're getting more and more mature. It's not going to happen overnight, and that's okay.
If you are thinking to yourself that you want to get into low-code development or learn about the Power Platform, then I want to personally invite you to sign up for this completely free self-paced course that is going to cover everything you need to know to begin low-code development today. Not too long ago, I was a complete beginner and I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't even know what the Power Platform was. But in just 2 years, I have gone from being an associate to a senior level consultant, and I can truly say that I love what I do. The content in this course is handpicked by me so you can understand the basics of the Power Platform and ultimately be prepared to take the PL 900 certification if that's something you're interested in. If you are interested, be sure to follow the first link in the description down below, and do not forget to use the promo code YouTube at checkout in order to get the course for completely free. This is going to give you immediate access to the entire course so that you can start to change your future today. Now, let's get back to the conversation. I don't know if you had anything else to add there, but I'd love to transition the
Yeah.
conversation here. So kind of what I was talking about in your intro. So you, as of recently, at the time of recording, you are now holding the title of Microsoft Enablement Manager. Now, I bet that looks sweet on LinkedIn. All right, that's all I'm gonna say. I'm jealous. It's way cooler than consultant, but nonetheless, um, I, no offense, but I wouldn't have necessarily known what this actually means. I'm
Yeah.
sure a lot of people might not actually
Yes.
know what this means. Could you give us maybe the high level definition, explain what a Microsoft Enablement Manager does?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like you mentioned, Hitachi Solutions is a Microsoft partner. We are a global systems integrator, or a GSI. So our entire business is implementing Microsoft solutions. We are a Microsoft only organization. So my job is to manage all the different pieces of that relationship. So that's everything from the programs that we participate in to the specializations and assessments we complete, to managing relationships with the sales team, the account teams, the product teams, the global black belt community, the marketing team, the executive team. Like, there are so many pieces to our relationship with Microsoft, and somebody needs to have a 30,000 foot view of all of those pieces. Also, as a GSI, we have certain KPIs that we need to hit, and as a member of that program. So I work with our partner team at Microsoft to set those targets, and then meet monthly and quarterly and annually to report in on our progress.
Cool. So let me ask you the why. Like, why? So we are a Microsoft partner, right? We work exclusively with Microsoft products, as I know a lot of people listening are also employed by Microsoft partners, so they get what I'm saying. Why is it important to nurture this relationship with Microsoft?
Yeah, absolutely. So Microsoft has a lot to offer. They're one of the largest organizations in the world, and it's not just about co-selling with them. So yes, the majority of our business comes from Microsoft, and we're brought into customer opportunities through Microsoft. That's a big piece of it, but it's also about being aware and connected to the right programs that help us grow our business. So there are so many different pieces of this giant company that is Microsoft. There are ways that we have access to training for our employees, ways that we can have funding for different programs. There are ways that we can connect with other like-minded partners. We've actually connected with their women's group and their women's organization. We've done some joint programming with some of their ERGs. So there's having those relationships helps us to access all of those different pieces of the organization. Let's say also if we need to work with a partner that has a certain specialization, we don't have to figure it all out on our own. We know the right people at Microsoft that can connect us to the right people. So it's all about relationship building and having connections to access and unlock all the different pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah. I was gonna ask you too, and again, you're fairly new into this role, so probably everything feels like a learning curve. But like, has there been the biggest, what's the biggest unforeseen learning curve that you
Mm,
feel like has hit you so far? Or do you have one yet, or is it like,
yeah.
it's all been a learning curve, you know?
Yeah, I think the most challenging part so far is just that Microsoft is a huge organization. They're one of the largest companies in the world. And so it's pretty complex. Just the way navigating the organization is a challenge in and of itself. I have worked with Hitachi Solutions for 5 years, and so that helps a lot. Having background knowledge and having learned of some of these programs and having been walked through how Microsoft is set up, I've had some of that exposure already, so that helped prepare me for this role. But I haven't worked at Microsoft, which a lot of people who are in similar roles have worked for the company. itself. And so they have that background, just that insider knowledge, right? And so that's the biggest challenge for me. Luckily, we have a lot of people at Hitachi Solutions who have worked for Microsoft or have been in the channel for 20 plus years. So I have a lot of support around me, and I have a lot of learning dumps where folks walk me through how everything is organized and kind of which people sit in which part of the company so that I know I make sure that I'm connecting with the right folks. But it's a challenge. It's overwhelming for sure.
Yeah.
and things change regularly. So at least once a year, everything kind of changes up. We're in that season right now. We're at the start of Microsoft's fiscal year. So a lot of folks have changed roles, but the programs change, all the requirements change. So you've got to kind of
Mm.
stay on top of things and keeps you on your toes. So you're always got to make sure that you are, again, talking to everyone and getting the most updated information possible.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you feel that your experience in your like kind of more business management
Yeah.
role and everything you've learned over these last 5 years, the things I've read in your intro,
Yeah.
how do you think that has like really prepared you well for this current role?
Yeah. That is a great question. I think in my role being on the operational side of the business, so I came in as an executive assistant. I moved into a business management role. I spent some time on our product team, and then I moved back to working with the executive team as our operational manager for our North American COO. And I got to sit in on our executive team meetings. I got to work with them very closely, and I worked on a lot of strategic initiatives for the company before I moved into this role. So I have a really strong network within our organization, and I know folks all over the company. Like I know the lay of the land at Hitachi Solutions, and that helps tremendously. Having all of those relationships, knowing how to bring people from different parts of the organization together to solve a complex problem. I mean, that is the number one skill that I've picked up in my career and what makes me uniquely qualified for this role. I know how to bring the right people in and help them achieve a common goal.
Yeah. I Okay. You've got me thinking of a ton of different questions that I think will take up the rest of the time that I can't do. But maybe just one kind of last one here.
Yeah,
And I don't know, do you have any advice for maybe their architects, maybe their executive assistants,
yeah,
maybe their consultants like myself? Like,
yeah.
do you have any advice for people that may be listening who now they're like, I had no idea this sort
Hmm.
of position even existed,
Yeah.
but now they're potentially interested in taking their career that way. What advice would you have for that
Yeah.
person?
One of the things, the mottos that I try to live by is do what you can, when you can, where you can. So making sure that you do whatever you can within your sphere of influence. So if you're an architect and you're on a project, try to listen to everyone's perspective. Listen to what your customers are saying to you, all of the different stakeholders. Try to see the problem from their point of view. Listen to the project manager on your team. What are the things that they're worried about? How are they approaching the problem? So, kind of starting to build a larger picture around whatever you're doing is just going to help you start to make connections faster. You can also ask your team leader, start to figure out what Microsoft programs affect what you are doing in your day job. So, are there certifications that you're getting or that it's recommended for people in your role to get? What does that process look like? Does that feed into some sort of advanced specialization that then unlocks certain funding for us? Just starting to learn whatever you can about the process within your department, within your practice, within your role, just starting to build those connections.
Yeah. Okay. You teed this up perfectly here for me. So you you started talking about doing what you can, where you can,
Yeah.
when you can. You consider yourself to be someone who's super action oriented, and you know I think a lot of people would very quickly say, okay, is this a good or a bad characteristic? They say it's a good characteristic, right? But I guess I wanted to ask you, why is this a good quality to have in order to grow one's career? And maybe a second question to tack onto that is like, why do you think it's positively impacted yours?
Yeah. On a personal level, you are the master of your own fate. Nobody can do anything for you, and you can have all of the opportunity and support in the world, but you have to want it. You have to find a way to get stuff done. And I think that is applicable in your personal life, in your professional life. It's something that people, your managers, and people around you will notice quickly. It's easy to point out problems. I think we've all been in scenarios where there are people complaining all the reasons why something won't work. Here's why this solution doesn't work, or what about this, or what about this? And it's a shift in mindset to be solution oriented and try to drive towards coming together and taking all of those various pieces and saying, okay, well, let's figure out what we can do. Let's start with what we can do here. So I definitely have a drive to get things done. And that can look different in different people. I think one of the things that I've learned, I co-run a program that we have called our Advanced Leadership Program here, which is a one-year program meant for aspiring leaders. And one of the first things that we do is have everyone take a work style assessment called DISC. Some of you may have taken this yourself. So it kind of puts your work style and your approach to work into these four main categories: dominance, influence, steadiness, and conscientiousness. And it starts with learning yourself and then learning other people. And if some of you are familiar with this, you may know immediately I'm a strong D. Like, I want to get stuff done. I want to drive to get things done and make decisions quickly. But not everyone is wired like you are. I learned that early on in my career. And the other part of taking assessments like this, understanding yourself, is understanding the people that you're working with and how they approach problems. Not everyone is going to have that same perspective that I do. And so it's understanding, how do other people approach problems? And then how do we work together to solve it? How do I use their perspective to solve the problem? So I have a tendency, especially earlier on in my career, I had a tendency to go quickly and sometimes not think all the way through about the consequences of the choices that we were making or the decisions that we were making. And so that's why it's important to have diverse perspectives on a team. So somebody else is someone saying on that team saying, whoa, like, let's stop and think about this. And let's think about all of the impacts that decision could have. It doesn't mean that they're not solution oriented just because they want to slow down and think about it. You can still be solution oriented and want to take some cautious steps and to take a little bit more time to think through something or approach it from a different perspective. So that's, I think, the key to building diverse teams and to making the best decisions.
For sure. So you started, I don't know, maybe you kind of already answered this, but I'd still like to, I guess, ask you again, so you're a strong D, you said, and I'm not necessarily familiar with this, but I'm understanding kind of what you're saying. And
you can go look it up after.
Personalities almost. Yeah,
yeah, it's like a personality work style assessment.
For sure. So, you said yourself, not you maybe learned the hard way that not everyone operates and thinks the same way. And so I guess I kind of wanted to ask you is maybe more practically, how do you navigate those relationships, the conversations, the working with them to get stuff done, even though they approach this problem differently than me? I don't know. Do you have any advice of how you practically navigate those differences?
Yeah, I think figure out how to speak other people's language. The first step is listening, right? It's a common theme in everything I'm saying is listening to other people and kind of seek to understand them, seek to understand how their brain works. And you can then say, okay, for example, if someone is pointing out the reasons why something won't work, you can say, that's a great point. So if you were designing this from scratch, how would you do it? What would alleviate the problem for you? Sometimes you have to sort of coach people to bring that out in them and start to open up the way that they think about a problem, if that makes sense.
No, it does. I think that makes sense. I have another question for you, and this is, I guess, a super practical one. Is I know at least for architects more than consultants, it can sometimes, meetings are a pretty decently heavy part of our days,
Yeah.
um, and you know, it can sometimes feel like I'm just in meetings all day and I'm not getting any, like, this is pointless.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
not actually doing any work. There's nothing actionable from this meeting. I mean, just yeah. I don't want to give any
Yeah.
any hints here.
I think we've
But
all
nonetheless,
been in meetings where we're like, this is draining. What am I doing
yeah,
here? But I think there's
yeah,
like everyone's
absolutely,
got that, like this meeting could have been an email. They've been in that perspective
yeah,
in that situation before.
yeah,
We've been
yeah. Or like in the first 5 minutes of the meeting, someone's like, "Hey, we should reschedule this." It's like, because this person's not gonna be here. It's like,
right.
okay, well, like, why? We should have just shot a Teams message
Yeah.
here, yo. Like,
10
what's
minutes
going on?
ago,
But
that
okay, nonetheless,
information.
nonetheless. All right, I gotta chill. I gotta chill. I gotta chill. I'm gonna get
Did
myself in
we hit
trouble.
like a
Um,
trigger for you?
no, 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 no. So I was gonna ask you though, like, how do you practically run actionable meetings?
Yep.
Like, how do you turn meetings from just like, okay, we're here discussing a topic to like, okay, no, we are here to get this done,
Yeah.
and you do, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to admit, I don't follow like a particular format. I'm not a project manager, and project managers would give you lots of good tools and formats on how to organize a meeting. I like to do things a little more organically. So for me, it starts by making sure you have all the right people in the meeting. Like, do we have all the decision makers? Do we have all perspectives represented? Are we missing anyone who's involved in this process? And then do people know why they're there? Making sure that there's an agenda and you've talked to people up front so they know why they're sitting in this meeting, what's expected from them. And then setting up early what the goal of the meeting is. So again, why am I here? What are we trying to accomplish? Are we trying to leave this meeting having made a decision? Is this the first meeting in a series of meetings to try to come to some sort of conclusion? Is the goal of this meeting to deliver information? Is it just, am I here for awareness to absorb information? Is this a discussion? So having people understand what's expected of them in the meeting, and then don't leave a meeting without aligning on next steps. That is my biggest pet peeve in meetings, is leaving without knowing what we're going to do next, or if we're very close to making a decision, knowing what it's going to take to get us across that finish line. I love Copilot for M365. I have like Teams. Copilot is my favorite tool right now, and so you can do this if you don't have access to that. You can do it just by taking notes. Like, listen to the things in the meeting that were brought up that we were discussed but not ever closed on. So you can ask in a meeting and utilize Copilot to say, what are the open items that we haven't aligned on yet? Like, what are the action items that we need to decide on? And so leaving that meeting and saying, hey, we need to take this offline, or great, this is what I heard, the decision was made. Is everyone in agreement? Kind of restating what the solution was or what the agreement that we came to is very important. Sometimes people will think that they're aligned and then they all heard things slightly differently. So restating the solution is critical, and doing that both verbally and then written in a follow-up email. So making sure that everyone understands kind of what the next steps and takeaways are. That's how I do it.
Yeah, I think so. Using Copilot to summarize Teams meetings, and that could be, creating what did we talk about. It could
Mm-hmm.
be who attended and who contributed. It could be, what action items need to come from this, what questions, were brought up but were never answered.
Mm-hmm.
And then taking that summary and, yeah, like you're saying, sending it to all of the meeting's attendees after the meeting in an email. And so then that way you kind of truly hammer out if there was any miscommunication, or people have different expectations,
Yeah.
or somebody wasn't actually listening,
Yeah.
during a certain
Which
topic or
we
something.
all have been, we all multitask, right? On meetings, we've all been there, we've all done it, we're all guilty. And so that also is helpful for the other people in the meeting who maybe got distracted or had to take a phone call, or somebody was at their door during the meeting, like sending that written follow-up just so everyone can say, oh yeah, that's what we aligned on, and having that so that they can go back to is always helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, like you said, Copilot for M365, it allows you to do that pretty easily. But I will say too, if you record the meeting, you can download the meeting transcript. This is a pro tip out there to anybody
Yeah.
listening. You can download the meeting transcript, and then utilizing a secure generative AI platform, not just Copilot on the web, but nonetheless, you can copy and paste that into Copilot or any other generative AI and get all these. One pro tip here. I'm kind of proud of this, so I'm just gonna take I'm gonna showboat here for 10 seconds. So I was recently on a project kickoff meeting for a new project that's starting up, and it's a Copilot project actually, and it's kind of we really don't have a good for a lot of our solution blueprints, right, which is kind of the document we deliver after the blueprint to the client saying, hey, this is what we're going to build, this is how we're going to build it, here's the processes we're going to follow. And typically you can find, everybody at Hitachi has a different form of a template or something for standard projects, a sales template, a customer service template, whatever. But Copilot being so new, there's not like a Copilot solution blueprint template anywhere. And so I had gotten this idea. I'm taking way more than 10 seconds, but that's fine. Where in this meeting I had used the transcript and I said, I want to find a quote of, here's the list of the meeting attendees that are representatives of the client. I want to find a quote from one of these people that said something about their goal for this Copilot project. And sure enough, one of these ladies on the project at one point had said the statement, "Our goal, blah 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 blah." And so it spit it out, and it's in our solution blueprint, whatever. And I'm ready to deliver this solution blueprint because I'm hoping someone's like, "Yo, that's good. This guy was locked in. He's paying attention." But I didn't necessarily remember this person saying that, right? But it's just a really easy way to like take every single little detail that's said in a meeting and just like really elevate it
Yeah.
and just showcase the business value that you can bring through that. You
That's,
know what I mean?
yeah, absolutely. That's incredible. Like generative AI is a tool that can help scale us and make us better, right? It
Yeah.
it just takes those little reminders and things like that. It makes it easy to kind of have all your ducks in a row. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I could definitely talk about Copilot forever, but I have one last question
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you. So you're very action oriented. You said as well you're a good listener, and I guess one of those could be your cop out answer here. But I'm gonna ask you, what's another skill that you think you have that um, makes you unique in your ability to maybe not necessarily succeed at your role, but like bring value to your employer
Yeah.
in the ways that you do?
Yeah. It's a good question. I think my answer is just that I care. I take pride in my work. I think apathy is easy, especially in a virtual world, especially when you're feeling slightly burnt out. Sometimes it's easy to feel like a cog in the machine, and some days you can only give 60%. But if you give that, that's 100% of what you have to give that day. So just showing up and trying to have the best attitude you can every day, trying to be there to support your teammates and help drive towards whatever you're there to do is, I think, the best skill that I have and that I can recommend for people to just care.
Awesome. Yeah. No, I think that's great. Meg, I think the conversation has been awesome. I'd love to, unless you have anything else to add there, I'd love to transition us to the after hours, happy hour section of the
Do
show.
it.
We can, hang out, let our hair down, right, and talk about anything outside of work. And getting
Yeah.
to know you, you said you have a lot of things that you're passionate about. Specifically, you enjoy reading, exercising, and spending time outdoors.
I do.
I was gonna ask you what's like a good book recommendation or a book series you're reading right now, or
Oh, good.
that you're
That's a
fired up
good
about?
question. So I am a big fiction reader. I like to I like to read just to get away from a screen. Like sometimes I want like a book that feels like a movie. I have books on management and on business and all of these things that are good for me. Personal growth. I read those too, but I like to read fiction because it just like is a way to unplug from my daily world, from work, my personal life, my family life, all this stuff, and just like be immersed in a different world. Um, let's see, summertime is a great time to read because all the like
Are you
summer reads come out.
I'm getting the vibe that you're like a real book person. You're not like a Kindle person
I like
or like an
both. I
audiobook
like
person.
both. I think they both, I appreciate a hardcover book or a paperback. I'm running out of space. I live in a small apartment in downtown Chicago, and so I run out of physical space. And I also sometimes read quickly, so Kindle's great. So if I'm going on a trip, I don't have to pack like 3 or 4 books. It's all right there, and I can just slide it into my bag. So I utilize both. I'm not a snob in that way.
That's good. It's not on this angle because it's on this wall, but I was saying I feel like everybody who's like smart and educated has a bookshelf full of books, like behind them in their office background every time. These are ironically all my wife's books. These ones aren't even mine. So those are all fiction back there. But this is the business bookshelf over here.
Yeah, yeah,
But so I like to think I was like, no, I need to have an actual book. One, because yeah, I mean I don't necessarily have a Kindle, but I do enjoy like just the simplicity of like reading a book, getting away from a screen,
yeah,
and so that I can fill a bookshelf.
yeah, yeah,
That is
right.
definitely another motive.
You can't see my
So that I look
bookshelf. It's
wise.
here. It's very large. It has a lot of books and it also has a lot of Legos, which is my other hobby that is
Sure.
limited by space. I have reached my Lego quota because I run out of space. But
Yeah.
you asked me for a book
That's funny.
recommendation early and I just thought of one.
Yeah.
Real Americans by Rachel Kong. That was my favorite book I've read so far this summer. Really good story. So,
There you go. I'll throw a link in the description, all
yeah, do
right, to
it.
the book if
Do it.
anyone's down. I was also gonna ask you too. So you said you're interested in exploring new
Oh,
restaurants.
yeah.
I'm sure there's truly an infinite amount of restaurants in Chicago, but I wanted to target this question.
Yeah.
So I've been to Giordano's on Michigan Ave a couple times.
Mhm.
Some pizza. If anybody out there lives under a rock. No, I'm just kidding. Giordano's Pizza, Chicago style pizza. But I've heard, from let me ask the Chicagoan.
Yeah.
I don't know, is that even right? What's the best Chicago style pizza in Chicago?
So I have a different take on this. So if you don't know, Chicago style pizza traditionally is deep dish. It's like the deep, almost like a pie, where it's like all the fillings are like this thick. The lesser known Chicago style pizza is tavern style pizza, which is my jam. So it's a thin, like cracker crust almost. It's round, but it's cut in squares. That's my jam. I'm not a deep dish girl. I like tavern style, and Nancy's Pizzeria is my favorite tavern style. Vito and Nick's is a classic. That's like an iconic Chicago tavern style, but Nancy's is the jam.
Yeah. There you go. That's what's up. I don't know if you have anything else to add there, but I did just want to say, Meg, thank you for being here. The conversation's been awesome and everything.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so excited to do this. Thanks for inviting me. It's been a fun part of my week.
Absolutely, yeah. It was good having you here and hearing your perspective and just everything, everything that's different from maybe normal guests or people like myself.
Yeah, shake it up a little bit. I like it.
Absolutely. Thank you again. Thank you to you for sticking to end the video. My name is Griffin Lickfelt, the host of Citizen Developer, and I'm excited to connect with you in the next one.